So how about getting what we actually type in the form? That seems prudent. So how does this work in React? Let's see. React has super good documentation. React.js.org. Search the docs. Let's search the doc for form. Form events, controlled components. That sounds interesting. Accessibility, synthetic event, forms, controlled components. That sounds like that might be a thing. So there's a whole page here on forms. HTML form elements work a little bit differently from other DOM elements in React because form elements naturally keep some internal state. For example, this form in plain HTML accepts a single name. This form has the default HTML form behavior of browsing to a new page when the user submits the form. If you want this behavior in React, it just works. But in most cases, it's convenient to have a JavaScript function that handles the submission of the form and has access to the data that the user entered into the form. The standard way to achieve this is with a technique called controlled components. So basically, our form is going to surrender control to React. It's not going to do what forms usually do in HTML. So typically in HTML, form elements like input, text areas, and select maintain their own state and update it based on user input. In React, mutable state is typically kept in the state property of components and only updated with set state. So we can combine the two by making the React state be the single source of truth. Then the React component that renders a form also controls what happens in that form on subsequent user input. So what happens when we start typing in the form is no longer up to just how form inputs work. It's up to React. An input form element whose value is controlled by React in this way is called a controlled component. So to do that, we basically just set the value on the input, and we set it to something from state. So if we want a controlled form in here, it sounds like message form is going to need to be an actual class because it needs state. No big deal. We just change it to one. It's not hard. So we can import component in addition to importing React. Instead of const message form equals props arrow function, we say class message form extends component. And handle submit is probably going to need to be a method now. Just get rid of the word const. Now it's a method. And we can't just type return because the component itself isn't a function, right? So all this needs to be inside the render method. So say render, open close parens, curly braces, indent our return statement, close curly braces. Just need to change a couple other things. Handle submit is now what? Yep, Sam? This dot handle submit, right? It's a method of our class. And inside handle submit, props.add message is now what? Props no longer come in as an argument. They're just props. Somebody knows. Come on. How do I change that? How do I change this line? Say it again. This dot props dot add message. So in a class component, that's how we get to our props. And lo and behold, it's a class now. And if we did things right, we shouldn't have broken it at least. Yep. No errors. And if I type something, it still adds our hard-coded thing in there. Good. Okay, you probably have so you don't want this dot, you just want handle submit. Yep. So since it's just a method inside the class, that's how you do it. That's how you add a this dot handle submit is defined. That's where this dot goes. This dot handle submit. Right? Because now handle submit is actually a method of our class. So we have to call it this dot handle submit now. So we changed it to a class without breaking anything, or we fixed the things that broke anyway. But we still have a form that is just doing what forms do. And we want it to do what React tells it to do. So on our input, we can just add value equals something from state. So we could initialize state inside the constructor, or as we recently learned, we can just use a property initializer to do it. So I should just be able to say state equals, just like I could say handle submit equals, and what it's really creating is this dot handle submit. So if this property initializer business really works, this should be totally cool without having a constructor. So state equals. How about body? This dot state dot body. Seem legit? Why not? And we'll initialize that as an empty string. And then on our input, we can say value equals, curly braces, this dot state dot body. And let's see what that does. React is now in control of the form. The form can't just do what forms do. It is now a controlled form. So let's type our message. Well, I can't even type in them now. Oh my gosh. Because now this is totally bound to what's in state. And it's not going to let us just change it like that. If we want to be able to change it, we're going to have to do a little work. So let's look at the example they have here. So they set state to this thing that just has a value that's initialized as an empty thing. Down here in the form, they have value equals this dot state dot value. So far, so good. But then they have on change equals this dot handle change. And handle change updates state with the value of the event target. So let's break that down. Let's make a new method. We'll call it handle change. We'll make it an arrow function so we don't have to worry about this. And on our input, we'll put on change, capital C, equals this dot handle change. So on change fires every time you type anything into there. Anytime you do anything that changes that input, that event is going to fire. So it's going to call handle change. So it used event.target. What do you think event.target is? When we submit the form, it's the form, right? But when we change the input, it's the input. So it makes sense that event.target.value would be what we've typed in there. So what they're doing in here is just setting state and updating whatever from state to whatever was typed into the form. So let's say this dot set state. What are we changing in state? We're changing body here. And we're changing it to event.target.value. Seem legit? Let's check it out. Type in a thing. Okay, I can actually type now. And if I look in my React component DevTools, so what component is this? This is message form, right? So I just start typing form. There it is, message form. And I see this .state.body is, in fact, what I typed in there. As I make changes, I see state changes. It even highlights it for us. Cool. So now state changes as we change the form. And what good does that do us? Well, now maybe we could actually pass that value into add message and have it put our actual message body. But that's not the way that method is written right now. So up in chat, we can make add message take an argument. Like body, I guess. And then in our note here, we could say body equals the body that was passed in as an argument, right? Now we learned, of course, if the variable name is the same as the key name, we could just shorten that to body. Right? Typing body here is exactly the same as writing body : body. So use the shorthand as long as you understand that that's what it means. It means I'm setting the body property equal to the variable body, which is the argument that was passed in. So if that works, again, we can test this in the console. So let's find chat. Here's chat. Now chat is set to $R, in the console. So I should be able to say $R dot add message and actually pass a string in there. What do you say, Kim? What do you say? I was zoning out. I really just wanted to know what you say. Totally worked. Although it attributed your words to Ferris, but oh well. I need to escape my apostrophe here. Feel better? All right. Totally works. I can pass a string in there now. And that's what we want to do in message form. So handle submit calls this.props.add message. So I want to pass in an argument there now. What argument do I want to pass in there? I do, but I can't just type body. What do I type? This.state.body, right? Cool. Excellent. Does it work? All right. What do you say, Jake?
Hello?
Totally works. We did it. I did it. I'm going to go ahead and commit this. I'll have a look at what's not working. So add messages that are typed, that are submitted from the form.